and every story can change the world. Together we are Global Speakers Talk.
Greetings, everybody. You know, when I was a kid in Sacramento, California, I am the son of Mexican immigrants who worked harder than most people I've ever met. My parents were awesome. I didn't grow up in rooms where voices like mine were expected. My parents, they had voices. They were big, warm, beautiful voices. My dad could hold a table of people in the palm of his hand, and my mom could make strangers feel like family before they finished sitting down. But the world didn't always make room for them. And I watched that. I stored it, and I carried it with me into every room I ever walked into after that. From Sacramento to Cupertino, where I spent time at Apple, and to the company I founded, Synergy AI. And here's what I've learned across every one of the chapters of my life. The world has never been louder, and yet so many people have never felt less heard. We have more platforms than ever, more channels, more ways to broadcast, more tools to amplify, and still people post into the void. They present in meetings and walk out wondering if anyone registered a word they said. They stand on stages and feel the audience politely endure them instead of genuinely connecting. Being heard is not a volume problem. It's not a platform problem. It's not a content problem. It's an identity problem, a presence problem, a resonance problem. And that distinction, that gap between making noise and making meaning, is exactly what we're here to explore today. Welcome to Global Speakers Talk Monthly Summit. I'm your host, JB Herrera, founder and CEO of Synergy AI, where we build AI ecosystems designed not just to make businesses more efficient, but to make people inside them more fully themselves. Today's episode is titled, Everyone is Speaking, Fewer Heard, Why Nobody Notices You. And we have 4 world-class voices joining us today. And I promise you, by the time you're done, you will not just understand why you haven't been heard, but you'll know exactly what to do about it. So, let's begin. Let's say you have something important to say. You know your material, you've done the work, you step to the mic or the camera or the boardroom table, and nothing lands. People nod politely, they move on, they don't remember you a week later. Why? Because knowledge without story is just information. The human brain does not remember information, it remembers narrative. It remembers feeling, it remembers the moment a story made something real. And my first guest is globally recognized as the speaker storyteller. She is a best-selling author, a neurodiverse entrepreneur, and the creator of the STAR storytelling system, a framework that has helped speakers across the world stop being forgettable, and start being unforgettable. She understands story not just as a communication tool, but as a neurological event. Please welcome Paulie Rafferty. Paulie, welcome to the stage.
Hello, thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here.
Absolutely.
How often are you told you to tell your story, but no one tells you which story to tell, how to tell it, or do you even feel like you have a story to share? Today, I'm going to go through a few hints and tips about which story to find, how to tell it, and why it's so important. Because I found out storytelling, I first discovered oral storytelling way back in 2005 when I was overcoming anxiety and depression that had me trapped in my own home. Luckily, I had friends who weren't going to leave me to rot in those 4 walls. So they slowly and gently guided me out into the world again. And that was when I saw my first storyteller, and she blew me away. The room was silent. We were in a dark, dingy pub in Birmingham where I grew up, and everybody went silent. Everybody was quiet, and they listened. And from that moment, she transported us out to a completely different world. And I managed to see her a few times before I managed to pluck up the courage to ask her, can I do this? Is this something that, somebody like me could do? And she very kindly gave me some hints and tips and ideas and sent me on my way with lots of ideas buzzing around in my head. And I went off and did some storytelling training and started to tell my own stories. But they were still traditional stories. They were myths and legends and things that had a strong female character, or they had a message that I felt important, but they weren't actually my own stories. The first time I stepped onto the stage, I re-owned that anxiety. I wanted to run, I wanted to hide, I wanted to just disappear into nothing. But I stepped onto that stage and I told a story, and it changed my life. I re-owned myself. I've survived with now 50 years of undiagnosed autism and ADHD. And up until that point, I didn't feel I was in control. But the moment I stepped on that stage, I felt in control of myself and my surroundings, and it was amazing. From that moment on, I was absorbed in the world of storytelling. I was researching it, looking into it, finding out about its history and why we tell stories. So we've actually been telling stories for 40,000 years. As soon as we had time and we developed fire and we could start wondering about the world around us, is when we started telling stories, because we don't like to know why. We want answers to everything. So that's why we got a lot of our old ancient myths and ancient legends and ancient religions, like the Norse gods and the Greek gods and the Egyptian gods. They all came from the power of storytelling. And then as civilizations grew and civilizations got more complicated and more complex, we started taking stories to teach and educate and entertain our young people and show them how to be in the society that they were growing up in. So society shapes stories and stories shape society. So that's how important telling the stories that you need to tell are, because the stories that you have inside you can shape the society that you're living in and the people around you. So there is actually science-backed evidence that stories are more memorable than statistics. There was a Stanford classroom study, and during this study, it was 63% of the audience remembered the stories, and only 5% remembered statistics. So that is a massive difference. That's like, if you throw that to the rest of the population, that's like 12% of the population who remembered the stories more, that they remembered the stories 12% more than they did the actual facts and the figures and the statistics. People switch off. We've listened to stories differently because we have been programmed to listen to stories as part of our evolving and our support and our safety and our survival instincts. We actually listen to them from a different part of our brain. Princeton neuroscientists popped a whole audience of people and a storyteller in an fMRI machine and studied what was going on while the storyteller was actually telling those stories, and the neurocoupling that happened between the audience and the people listening was absolutely amazing. It was only when people stopped understanding what the storyteller was saying that the connection was broken. So your story, it's not just a story, it's a connection with your audience. So I started the storytelling for speakers back in 2020, COVID, when I'd just done a narrative therapy diploma, and I was looking to maybe start my own business. And I was looking at all this stuff online, and people kept on telling me, you've got to tell your story, you've got to tell your story. And I was thinking, what story do I tell? Who do I tell it to? And all of these questions started to flood into my mind. And I'm sure probably some of you have had those questions yourselves. So this is why I developed the STAR storytelling system. So the first thing you need to look at when you're thinking about which story to tell your audience and how to tell it is who your audience is. This is the most important thing. Who are you actually telling your story to? Because I do normally have sausage rolls, because in the UK, I'm based in the UK, sausage rolls are a really big thing and we love them. For our international audience, the sausage roll is sausage meat wrapped in pastry, and they're amazing. So when you're selling sausage rolls, if you're selling sausage rolls, you've got the best sausage rolls in the world, and you're looking to sell these sausage rolls. Who are you going to go and sell them to? You're going to find an audience of people that loves sausage rolls. You're not just going to wander down the street, find a conference hall and wander in with your offering, because it could be a vegan conference, or it could be a health and wellness conference, and nobody there is going to want your sausage rolls. They're going to want something a bit more healthy. But if you find a conference full of butchers and you go in with your sausage rolls, people are going to want to eat them. They're going to want to buy them. Or even better, a sausage roll convention where people love these tasty pastries with sausage meat inside. Then you're going to sell them. So who are you selling your stories to? Who are you selling your product to? When you can get a really good idea of who this person is when you can pick up the story that you have that will resonate with them. And the important thing, very important thing, is that you are not the star of that story. You share that story because it is your life past. It is a path that you have traveled on in your life. And you are then sharing that with your audience so that they know that you have experienced something similar to them, that you understand them, that you can help them. If you've watched Star Wars or Star Trek or any of these things, you're the Yoda, you're the guide. There's always, in every story, there's the call, then there's the refusal of the call, then there's the guide who leads you on the way. You're there to help your audience. They're in the refusal point at the moment. They know where they need to go. That's why they're listening to you. That's why they're in your radar. But they're not ready to make that step. So you share your story to show them that you are the person that can lead them to where they want to go. So your story will show them that you have experienced it, you have overcome it, and that you can guide them through it and be there with them through it. So that's the first point in my star storytelling system, is who it is you serve. Because if you're not clear on your ideal audience, and you won't know which story to actually tell them, you'll be trying to sell sausage rolls to vegans or sausage rolls to people on a health journey. So storytelling is a really, really important part of your journey and of their journey. It is what is going to be remembered the most by your audience. They're not going to remember the facts and the figures. They're going to remember the story. The story will help you connect with them on a neurological level, which is absolutely amazing how that can happen. And your story will show them that you know exactly where they've been, where they're going through, what they're going through, and that you've overcome it. And it gives them hope. Hope is one of the main things that stories were there for. It's one of the biggest gifts you can give someone. And it's one of the things that's lacking so much in this world at the moment. So your story is what you need to tell. And to find it, just think of who your audience is, and just go for it. Just share your story, because someone out there needs to hear it and will remember you for it. Thank you very much. You're muted.
There we go. Okay, couldn't find the button. So here I am hosting the show, and I get messed up. Anyway, Paulie, that was really interesting. The star process that you've created over this long time that you've been doing this, is that something that you have, you can reach out and teach and people can learn from it?
Yes. Yeah, I do teach it.
Ah, okay. So why don't you share with us how they can get in touch with you and what that STAR program can do for them?
Yeah, they can reach out to me on any of my social medias. I'm a Change the Script or Paulie Rafferty on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I've also got a website, which is, I'm just pivoting at the moment, so it's now www.changethescript.org. There's a little thing at the bottom that is my free stories in business. So it tells you the importance of storytelling in business and gives you a few hints and tips on how to do that. And I am actually giving a special offer out at the moment. So if people do reach out to me, they can get one-to-ones with me for half price. So that's a really good introduction to the STAR storytelling system.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Paul. I really appreciate it. I know that the audience is really going to appreciate the information and the expertise that you provide. Thanks for being here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, so that was really interesting. Paulie showed us that the story is the delivery system for everything you want the world to remember about you. And here's the question I want to sit with for a moment. What's happening inside you when you try to tell that story? What's happening in your nervous system when you step into that room, that stage, that Zoom call? What are the stories your brain is running about whether you deserve to take up space? What are the invisible emotional patterns that cause a powerful, intelligent person to shrink at exactly the moment they need most to expand? Because you can know every storytelling framework, but if the voice inside your head is louder than the one coming out of your mouth, none of it will matter. And my next guest brings the science. She's a clinical psychologist, a leadership strategist, and she is the founder of, I'm going to mess this up, Helen Aha Yin Alithea, an organization doing transformative work at the intersection of neuroscience, ethical leadership, and integrative health internationally. She doesn't just understand why you go quiet. She knows what to do about it from the inside out. Please welcome Helen Argyrou. Helen, welcome.
Hi there, JB. Hello to everybody. Thanks so much to all of you for putting such a great summit together. Thank you to Anshu as well. It's really great to be here. I would love to share with you as much value as I can today. So I'm going to give you 3 really important follow-up actions if you are interested to work with me or to get into a mastermind or get some training or support in what I'm going to share with you today. So bear in mind that at the end of this chat, there will be some links that you can follow, each giving you a different trick that you can implement. But first, let me explain a little bit about them. So my name is Helen. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm living out here in the middle of the Mediterranean in Cyprus and very excited to share with you what I have today because it's actual evidence from my own experience running my own personal branding and visibility strategies over the last 10 years. And I've also presented 10 conferences at the end of this year with 170 people on stage in the place I live here, Cyprus, in the Netherlands, in Dubai, and very soon again in Cyprus and India at the end of the year. So what I'm sharing with you is a strategy that I think is very transcultural. It applies to everybody. It's really the cutting edge nowadays for us to not only be visible, but to actually do something with our visibility. And what do I mean? There is coming a time now where actually being visible to your audience is not actually enough. There are many people that visit your website, 96 to 98%, in fact, that actually leave without taking any action. In fact, most websites are now converting 2 to 4% of the visitors, meaning that people are overwhelmed, so much information, and they don't necessarily get convinced just by clicking once or twice or a few times through social media that they should work with you. I'm sure you see it in your own life too. So many people from all over the world are presenting different products and services that are always relevant maybe, but they also compete with each other because many people are doing very similar things. So what I have to teach you today is something about this strategy that is going to help you cut through the noise, and various tips and tools to be able to do that. So I'm going to share with you first one of my formulas, which is called the VIP Loves AC method. It's a formula based on this acronym to help you remember the bits and pieces, the VIP that loves AC formula or method. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the idea of my brand and why I think this AHA acronym, which is really what my website is about and what I teach from in many different forms, is helping us also catch that information in a nice kind of way where we can remember it as well. And then I'm going to give you these tips that I mentioned right at the top of my talk at the end. So these are the three things we're going to deal with today. The formula for the VIP who loves AC, the second AHA big aha moment that we all need to be having, and then thirdly, some ways to take action, the 3 tips and tools I mentioned before. So let's begin. You know that there really isn't enough conversion happening nowadays, right? I've just mentioned the amount of people that visit a website, don't take action. And now there's also only 5% of your market or industry of people that are really ready to buy right now. I'm sure you know yourself too. You might get really excited when you're on Instagram. You might see something you like. You might be on LinkedIn, get very impressed. But really, are you ready to buy? Research is saying only 5% of people are really ready. So it has a lot to do with attention and memory. It's not enough, as I just mentioned before, to actually be visible nowadays. You have to be able to be relevant, and you also have to be familiar. Now, when we talk about getting recognizable and getting familiar, we now know that people don't actually value what it is that you say only, or even your expertise anymore. There's not enough going on around your social media pages that even can convince people. What people really need is very specifically your perspective. They need to know about your experience, and they need your interpretation of your industry, whatever you think is really necessary. Let's say you're in business development. You know, what is your perspective about business nowadays? What's your experience in business? And how do you interpret what you think they need in order to develop their business? So we can see that visibility is essentially what's creating the opportunity, but it's still not really enough. People are not just going to come and buy what it is that you have to offer anymore just because you're the expert. In fact, this is probably the most worrying thing nowadays, is that, pardon me, people are not necessarily neurologically synced up with you well enough in order to know all the things that make you so wonderful to work with them. We had a great tip from our previous speaker about the neuroscience behind storytelling. So when you're on stage and when you're speaking at a conference, storytelling is one of the most powerful things to do. How can you make sure that they are going to remember you and your brand, and that you have a point of view, and that you do have personal experience laced into the way you structure your speech, and that you also are able to interpret. So you show your expertise, not just speak about it. Now, this is where the formula comes in. So the VIP who loves AC method is quite a simple set of tools that you can begin to build in the next year. So I always like to coach with my leaders or people that I work with on stage, or people that come for speaker training with me, with a strategy that I suggest they practice 5 times during the year. So can you think about 5 specific visibility moments that you would build between now and next year in June? For example, you could be planning a visibility strategy or a visibility booster. You could come along and I can help you plan that. Or you can think about 5 specific events or moments where you get to establish your visibility in your industry. So this is the first thing you need to do, is build a visibility strategy. And I suggest 5 of them per year. Second acronym that we had was the letter I, the VIP. The I stands for integrity. It's becoming more important nowadays than ever before to actually stand for something and to be a dignified, respectful, trustworthy person for people to buy from. We're noticing that many young generation type consumers are not interested in buying in the marketplace unless they actually trust that person. And the same goes for people in older generations more than before, because there's so much available, so much competition. People really want to trust in you before they buy from you. And that's where familiarity comes in. That's why 5 visibility moments also per year are really quite reasonable, because they will get to know you. They will begin to feel more familiar with you and your brand, and they also get to really test out your level of integrity. So integrity is very important. The P stands for publicity. The VIP, P stands for publicity, because we all need to be thinking about how do we put our work out into very serious and reputable places. So these are things like printing an article in a journal, or maybe just writing one on LinkedIn if you are in certain industries, like in more scientific areas, or maybe you're more of an academic, or maybe you're someone that has, a certain kind of invested opinion about certain things. You would need to publish maybe even a book at some point. We've seen many people going into book publishing recently in order to establish more credibility and more authority in the marketplace. So publicity is very important. Publications are very important, but publicity also means being able to do really good PR. This is where networking comes in. And I always talk about strategic networking, and that's one of my tips that I'll be giving at the end, a call to action where you can do some strategic networking. So publicity, how good are you at talking to people in the press? Do you know where to go if you want to publish something in a magazine? Do you feel like you can deliver a message on a podcast really well and do some PR around it? Do you know what a press release is? Do you present a press release before you do a special event? Do you know how to engage the media? These are very important for the publicity piece. And then we had the end of the formula, which is LOVE's AC, right? And this is the A now in the acronym that stands for authority. Many of us might think we already have a certain seriousness in the marketplace. Maybe you think people trust and respect you. But until you can do enough of what I call authority marketing, it's not so clear that people really know what you're about. So the seriousness behind what you're about really matters here. And how expert are you actually? What is your experience level? Maybe you've done, 6 years in your industry and you're a great business developer, but actually you have actually met with a few mentors or a few leaders in your field, and you actually use some of what they've taught you and you are able to teach it. That's a slight detail that really needs a little bit of positioning in the marketplace. So it's quite helpful to think about how you might be able to network with people that have authority as well, and actually use those experiences and present them on your social medias a little bit more carefully. The last one is the C, which stands for capacity and credibility, because unless you really have a certain kind of measurable way of repeating the results you say you can get for people, you don't really have credibility. So how can you build that? How can you have other people endorse you, get the right testimonials on LinkedIn? How can you make sure that you actually are your word, not just in your integrity, but that you actually can be relied upon, that you're really credible in what you can deliver? Very important. And then consistency and capacity come into that C acronym as well, which are very, very important, that we must be regular with our visibility. We must be continuous and consistent with it. But also, when I speak about capacity here in the end of the formula, it's really, really clear nowadays that those of us that have the stamina to fight through all the overwhelm, to pick ourselves up when we have a disappointing moment, or when we are struggling on our personal life challenges, and we manage to regulate our nervous systems, or we build a growth mindset and we protect ourselves from burnout, that's becoming very, very important nowadays as well. So those leaders who can shine through with this VIP Loves AC method, who stay visible 5 times per year, who have a level of integrity that you can trust in, those people that are actually able to put their publicity and press method out into the marketplace, very important, as well as their authority. You know that they're an authority in their field. You can see it in their social media, and you also can detect a certain kind of credibility there. And you know that they have the capacity to hold you, to teach you, to train you, to support you. Very, very important. And now we come to a nice, easier way to bring it all in and bring it all together before I give you some of my tips and calls to action. The whole insight we have in life, our special, unique point of view, is really what people come to you for. And for that, I've always used the word aha because it's such an easy one, and it also catches my surname a little easier, and my business name became Helen Aha over the years. So the first A just stands for attention. Everything I've said so far is really about how do you cultivate the right kind of attention for the work that you do. Secondly, harmony. Relevance, being relevant out in the marketplace, isn't about having the loudest voice or being the best at what you do. Of course, you can be good enough, but the point is, do you really understand people's needs? Are you in harmony with what people need? When your message really matches the audience and their concerns or the person you want to work with, you start to become much more memorable. And then the last very important A in AHA is like, what is your actual, real, authentic point of view or message? People will forget the information you give them, but they will remember how you made them feel. I'm sure you've seen that around. It's been posted so much. But the trust and the real connection they have with you is what really creates the influence. So remember, it's not as simple as just staying relevant. You also have to resonate with audiences. You need to be able to really get your whole point of view across in a very credible way. You've got to be familiar, and you've got to be resonating with how they really feel. There is very interesting science around coherence now, where the head and the heart are in a great connection and focused on something positive. And this is becoming a very important way for people to receive your message. They need to know that you are walking the talk, so they stay connected to you and trust in you even more. So let's go straight to those calls to action. If you would like to mastermind with me or find out more about how to collaborate with us here in Cyprus, we have great ecosystems around health, wellness, but also business development. There will be a link coming through to you for a group on LinkedIn that you can join. And then for those of you that are interested in a new, interesting strategy that can help you have 400 leads from the United States, you will be welcomed to my 4 Steps to 400 Leads webinar, which is happening on the 16th of June. That's a Tuesday. And the webinar will explain to you exactly what you need to do in order to have a chance to present what it is that you're about and build a lead magnet. If you don't know what that is, you need to come to the webinar. and then actually present that link so that you can get 400 secure leads. And this package is available at 500 euros as a special offer to anybody who's on the call on that day, the 16th. You'll see those 2 links. I'm going to pass them on to JB. He's going to share them with you. And that's a real great opportunity for you to learn how to build your list, of course, but also to boost your list with very prime, interested online business developers who are coming from the US market, but also people that work in different countries all around the world. So it's a fabulous opportunity. It's just over €1 per lead. And if you check any other advertising and marketing promotional strategies, you'll see that you are asked to pay much more than that. Sometimes people are paying €18 for a click on a Facebook ad. So this is a great way for you to be able to get a campaign running, really test an audience, get some people signed up to your newsletter, and then you actually can have a guaranteed number of leads on your list. I've personally used this particular campaign over 4 or 5 times, rebuilt my list now, and I'm moving to another CRM so that I can actually host all the leads that I got from there. And I've promoted many different products. The audience group is very open to any support from any industry. So if you have a great package, you want to sell, a book you want to promote, a special little project you're running, or an actual gift that you want to give away that leads to something that they can buy from you, a really great strategy. Join me on the 16th of June for that. I'll tell you more. And then for the last little tip for today, I want to just leave you with my business page, Helen A, which is on Facebook, and or connect with me on LinkedIn, because anyone who responds to any of the socials gets a response from me too. So I'd love to see you there. Thank you so much to everybody again.
Helen, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Just so everybody understands, I'm in. I'll see you on the 16th. And I'm intensely motivated because what Helen has given to us today is a gift. The gift of being able to really communicate and connect with your audience in a way that has practical, immediate implementation and results. So I'm in, I'm signing up. I encourage everybody to do exactly the same thing. You can see the Facebook down here below. And we'll have more links for Helen later on in the program. Helen, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to meeting you and having further conversations. This is going to be fun. I love it. Well, Helen has just taken us deep inside the neuroscience of presence, what happens in the body and the brain when we stand up to be seen. But I want to add another layer. For so many people, women, people of color, first-generation professionals, neurodivergent leaders, the silence isn't only about self-doubt, it's also about the room itself. And about whether the environment signals, you are welcome here, your voice is expected here, you belong. Before most people can find the courage to speak authentically, they have to believe they belong in the conversation, and that's not a small thing. That is the thing. Now, my next guest has built his entire career dismantling that barrier. He's a certified diversity executive and the host of the powerful podcast, I Know I Belong When, a series that has redefined what belonging, identity, and authentic leadership looks like in the modern workplace. He doesn't just talk about inclusion, he builds the architecture for it. So, please welcome to the stage, Christopher Bylone. Christopher, welcome.
Thank you so much, JB, for having me here. I really appreciate it. So, today, the premise of this panel asks you how to become unmissable. I actually want to offer a reframe before I say anything else. You cannot be unmissable to the people you have already missed. Every time we take a stage, post a video, publish a slide, or send a tweet, we are making a choice about who receives what we are saying. Most speakers think they are competing for attention. What they are actually doing is filtering their audience. The question is not whether you are are you loud enough? The question is whether you are reachable. So the next several minutes that I'm going to take are about 3 places where speakers quietly lose people without realizing it. Their language, their visibles, their visuals, and the way they connect with, and the way their content lives on every screen after the talk is over. So accessibility is not a checklist. It is not a compliance burden. It is not the difference between speaking to a room and being received by a room. When someone in your audience has to translate around your words, decode your slides, or guess what your post meant, you have already lost a percentage of your impact. They will not say so. They will just simply leave with less of you than you have given them, than you've already given them. Inclusion is the same principle pointed at identity. Half of your audience hears ladies and gentlemen and quietly notes that you do not see them. You are not missable to that half. You are forgettable to them on purpose. So pillar 1, your language. 2 categories deserve attention here. The first is the gendered language. Phrases like you guys, ladies and gentlemen, manpower, manning the booth, and chairman all carry an assumption baked in. There are warmer, more precise, and more memorable alternatives. Everyone, you all, team, workforce, staffing the booth, chair, none of those cost you anything. All of them widen the door. The second is ableist language, and this is where most speakers are caught off guard. Words like crazy, insane, lame, dumb, tone deaf, blind spot, falling on deaf ears are so common in keynote speeches that we forget what they actually reference. They reference real people. They reference disability and neurodivergence used as shorthand for something bad. The replacements are stronger anyway. Wild lands harder than crazy. Unbelievable is more vivid than insane. An area I have not paid attention to is more honest than a blind spot. Precise language is more memorable than a lazy idiom. Inclusive language is not softer, it is sharper. Pillar 2, your visuals. If your slides cannot be seen, your message cannot be remembered. 3 things that matter here. Color contrast. Light gray text on a white background reads as elegant to designers and is invisible to anyone with low vision, anyone over 40, and anyone in a brightly lit conference room. The Web Contrast Accessibility Guidelines set a minimum contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1 for normal text. Free tools will check for this for you in seconds. If you cannot read your own slide at arm's length on your phone, your audience cannot read it from row 12. Captions. Closed captions are no longer a courtesy. They are the difference between your talk being shareable and your talk being skipped. Captions help deaf and hard of hearing audiences first. They also help everyone watching on mute, everyone watching whose first language is not English or the language in which you are speaking, and every person trying to retain what you said. Captioning your recorded content is the single highest leverage accessibility move you can make. And slide density. If your slides read like a paragraph, your audience is choosing between listening to you and reading you. They will choose neither. One idea per slide, generous type, generous spacing. If a chart needs to be on a slide, narrate it out loud so people who cannot see it clearly can receive the point. Now for pillar 3, your social and digital content. Your talk does not end when you exit the stage. It lives in clips, in captions, posts, threads. Most of those formats are quietly hostile to disabled individuals, and most speakers have no idea. Here's a few specifics I want you to consider. Emojis. Screen readers read them aloud. A row of 7 fire emojis becomes fire, 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 fire to a blind user. One emoji used with intention is fine. A garland of them turned your post into noise. Bold and stylized text. Those decorative fonts people copy and paste into LinkedIn posts are not actually fonts. They are Unicode mathematical symbols. Screen readers either skip them or read them as gibberish. For example, if you bold the word decorative fonts, which I just used in my previous sentence, a screen reader would read it as those graphic people copied and pasted into LinkedIn, instead of reading it as those decorative fonts people copy and paste into LinkedIn. So those who are using a screen reader completely just did not understand that sentence to begin with. If accessibility matters to you, write in plain text and let the platform handle emphasis where it is offered. Alt text. Every image you post must carry a written description, not a caption, a description. What is in the image? Who's in it? What's happening? LinkedIn, Instagram, Blue Sky, X, all of our social media platforms have an alternative text field. Most speakers leave it blank. Filling in it just takes a few seconds, and it will allow your picture to reach an audience that most people are not reaching. And hashtags. This is the one that I find most hilarious. Capitalize the first letter of each word in a hashtag. It's called camel casing. Here's an example. A few years ago, Margaret Thatcher died. And when she died, a hashtag started trending that said, "Now Thatcher's dead." Because people did not camel case it, some people saw "Now Thatcher's dead," and some people read it as "Now that Cher's dead." And it really became a trending hashtag where people thought Cher had died, which was not the case at all. So a simple hashtag that you shared could cause confusion for others around you. And so that's where I want to really kind of close this out with. Here is what I want you to take away from this conversation. Remembering, Unmissable is not about volume. It is about reach. The speakers who become unforgettable are not the loudest in the room. They are the ones who whose work travels farthest because most people can actually receive it. Every accessibility choice you make is a quiet declaration that your message is far more than the default audience. Every inclusion choice you make is a quiet declaration that you saw who was in the room before you opened your mouth. What people remember is not the volume, they remember the welcome. Thank you.
Well, Christopher, so thank you so much for, I learned so much. And I generally try to, in my speaking and in my website and everything that I do, talk about how you should try and be less biased. And as much as I try to do that, I've learned some really key points today, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because being inclusive doesn't necessarily mean just the things that we have already thought about. As I started the show, I'm from a Mexican family here in the United States, and we were treated differently. But what I didn't recognize is the fact that there are people who who are blind, who don't experience social media the way we do. And it never even dawned on me. So I want to thank you for that, opening my eyes. And as you see down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see you can follow Christopher in a lot of different places. He's got a wonderful podcast. His LinkedIn information is there. And I strongly recommend that you take the opportunity to reach out to him. Because one of the things that we don't understand really is the breadth of people that exist in this world. And making sure that we communicate with everybody is really important. So Christopher, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the roundtable and hearing what you have to say about some of the topics that we're going to talk about.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much. All right. Well, Christopher has shown us that belonging is not a soft concept. It's the foundation on which every authentic voice is built. Now, I want to zoom out, way out, because we're living in a moment in history that changes everything we've been talking about today. For the first time ever, the tools to communicate at scale are available to almost everyone. AI can write content. It can schedule posts. It can generate talking points, subject lines, hooks, which means the noise level is not just high, it's about to become deafening if it's not deafening already. So the question becomes, in a world where the machines can speak, how does a human being stand out? When AI can replicate polish, what's the signal that only a human being can send? And my final speaker today has been living at that exact intersection. He's the founder of AI Workflows Agency, the host of the Champion Mindset Collective podcast, and one of the clearest voices I know on how to simplify AI. And I know AI. So he can help you automate the right things and still lead with unmistakably human purpose. Please welcome Anthony Dahya. Anthony, welcome. And I should say good morning.
Good morning. It's 2:50 a.m. here in New Zealand. So thank you, JB. It's great to be here. It's a privilege to be here on the Global Speakers Talk. I want to start with a question. In a world where everyone can post, record a video, start a podcast, send a newsletter, use AI to create content in seconds, why do some voices stay with us and others disappear almost immediately? Well, I believe it's because it comes down to this. We do not remember noise. We remember clarity. We remember honesty, authenticity. We remember people who have the courage to show up as themselves. The theme I've been asked to speak about is everyone is speaking, but a few are truly heard and remembered. And I believe that this is so true right now. There has never been an easier time to be more visible. And yet, there has probably never been a harder time to be truly heard. Because being visible is not about being memorable. Sorry, it's not the same as being memorable. Having content is not the same as having connection. And being polished is not the same as being trusted. At the work of AI, intersection of AI, automation, business growth, mindset, through my business AI Workflows agency, and also the Champion Mindset Collective podcast, this is where I have the privilege of speaking with people about resilience, change, leadership, identity, technology, AI, and a lot more. And what it really takes to keep moving forward when everything around you is falling apart. How do you build that, as Helen said, growth mindset, but a champion mindset where every human being is a champion for themselves and they are pushing themselves through these times? And something I've noticed through the conversations is that the moments that stay with us are usually not the most polished moments. They are the honest ones. They're the moments where someone stops performing and simply speaks from what is true for them. That is when people connect with you. And I believe that how founders and leaders need to communicate today is not louder, not more jargon, not by copying everyone else and post what they're posting, but with clarity, with courage, and authenticity. So why do smart people struggle to be heard? The challenge for many smart people is that they know so much, yet they're trying to say everything at once. A founder might say, we help with strategy, operations, innovation, systems, leadership, growth, transformation, AI, automation. Well, how much of that is that? And that may be all true. But the person listening is quietly asking, what does that mean for me? Can you help me with the thing that's keeping me awake at night? And that is where people can lose the room, not because they are not experienced, not because they lack value, but because the message is too complicated. People do not remember complexity. They remember the person who made the problem easier to understand. They remember the person who said, I see where you are stuck. I can help you move forward. So here's the question for every leader and founder listening today. When people hear you speak, do they understand you for what you stand for? Do they understand who you help? Do they understand the problem or the pain that you solve? And perhaps more importantly, does your message sound like you? Authenticity takes courage. This is where authenticity matters. But being authentic is not about sharing every detail of your personal life online. It's about being willing to speak from what you genuinely believe. It's having the courage to say, this is what I stand for. This is how I see the problem. This is the way I believe I can help. And yes, that can feel vulnerable. Because the moment you stop hiding, behind a broad language and safe messages, people can actually start to see you. They can agree with you, they can disagree with you, they can decide whether they like the message and it's for them. But that is the point. You're not here to sound like everyone else. You're here to communicate what is true to your core, to you. What aligns to your values, what aligns with the business that you're building, and what genuinely helps people you are here to serve. Because people do not trust a leader simply because they speak often. They trust a leader when their words, their values, and their actions all line up. That is authority, not a loud voice, not perfect brand, not a large following. It's alignment. Where does AI fit in all this? Well, now, of course, we need to talk about AI, and AI gives us an extraordinary ability. It helps us research, write, organize ideas, prepare presentations, create content, follow up with customers, and build better workflows. But there's also a risk. AI can help people create a lot more content without creating any more meaning. We've all seen it, a polished post full of impressive words, but when you finish reading it, if you think, what did they actually say? Let us call it what it is: AI slop. Content that sounds fine, looks fine, but there is no real voice, no real belief, and no person behind it. And the answer is not to reject AI. The answer is to use it from a place of clarity and authenticity. Before I ask AI to help me communicate, I need to ask myself, is this what I truly believe? And this is where your critical thinking comes in. Would I say this in a real conversation with a client? Does it sound like me? Does it align with my business that I'm building? And does it solve the problem for that person listening? Because AI can amplify your voice, but it cannot decide what you truly stand for. It can help you structure a message, but it cannot give you the courage to own that message. It can make you more visible, but it cannot make you more trustworthy if there is no truth behind what you're saying. So, clarity before tools. This is why in my own business, I work with businesses. I do not start with the tool. And I've had many business owners come to me recently and say, what tool should I use? And I say, that is not the conversation we're having today. When I complete an AI assessment with a business, I do not walk in and ask, where can we put AI? I start with different questions. Where is your business going? What are you trying to achieve? What challenges are you getting in the way? Where are people losing time? Where is the customer experience breaking down? What problem actually needs solving? Once you have all of that clarity, then we can ask, how could we use AI and automation in your business? Because it's easy to be attracted to the shiny tool. But if you automate a broken process, you simply make the mess happen faster. You see, processes can be made of workarounds and band-aids. When they fall off, you're just amplifying the noise, and whatever lies beneath gets amplified. And the same is true with communication. If your message is unclear, asking AI to generate more content does not fix the problem. It simply gives you more unclear content and more quickly. And that is why mindset and clarity are the foundation before visibility and clarity, before automation and clarity. Before asking AI to amplify your voice, be clear on whose voice it is amplifying. Now, how can founders and leaders stand out? So, can founders use AI in a way that genuinely helps them being remembered? For me, it's quite simple. Start with yourself. Ask yourself, what do I really believe? What do I want to be known for? What experiences have shaped the way I see the problem? Because when you're not clear with yourself, it becomes very easy to borrow the language, ideas, confidence of everyone else. Then align it to your business. Ask yourself, who are we genuinely here to help? What problem are we solving? What change do we want to create for people? Does our message reflect what we truly actually deliver? If that's not enough, it's not enough to have a message that sounds good. It has to connect with something real, a real problem, a real solution, a real result. Then use AI and workflows to amplify what is already clear. AI can help you turn a raw idea into a clear post. It can help you turn a podcast conversation into useful lessons for your audience. It can help you capture voice notes, organize your thoughts, create follow-up emails, identify themes, build processes or opportunities do not fall through the gaps. It can help you show up more consistently. It can help you communicate more clarity. It can help you turn expertise into impact. But the starting point is still you, your belief, your clarity, your purpose, your humanity. So the 3 questions to take away from here is that I would like to leave with you is, what do you want to be remembered for? What truth have you been holding back because it feels safer to sound like everyone else? And how could you use AI not to replace your voice, but to carry that voice of yours further? We're living in a world where everyone is speaking, everyone can create content, everyone can use AI, but the people who will be remembered are not always the loudest. They are the ones that are clear. They're the ones that are courageous enough to be real. They're the ones who understand that truth does not come from perfect content. Truth comes from alignment, from showing up as a person in the message and the way you serve people. So I just want to say that use it and say what matters clearly. Do not copy the crowd. Use it to strengthen your voice that you already know that is true to you. And don't be afraid to be seen, because whenever you speak with clarity, courage, and authenticity, you do more than just attention. You build trust, you can create connections, and you become someone worth remembering. Thank you, everyone.
Well, okay, so Anthony, you're a brother from another mother on the other side of the world. Okay, so for everybody who is listening to live and on the recording, I want you to take what Anthony has said really deeply inside of who you are, because what he's talking about is the key to utilizing technology in the best way that you can so that you can reach the audience that you want to reach. What he's talking about, being clear about who you are, what your values are, that's the basis for everything, for your speaking, for your content creation, for how you communicate, how you build relationships. It's all based on that. So when you articulate those types of feelings, those values, and build rules on them, then you can start to think about what you can automate. Only after you do those things. And so Anthony's very, very clearly and I think probably in the best way possible articulated those principles. So down at the bottom of the screen, you see I've got a bunch of different links that Anthony has. I want you to take the opportunity to reach out to him, because what he's talking about is the key to making your business, your speaking business, your website, your communication with clients, your marketing, your post-sales support, all of those things are critical, and to use the principles that he's talked about. So Anthony, thank you so much for being here today. In my business, I do exactly what you're talking about. So, what we need to do with everything that we talked about today on this particular topic and our speakers is we need to be the people who lead by example. From Paulie to Helen to Christopher, now to you, Anthony, we are in a place where we can actually have a massive impact on the rest of the world if we're willing to jump out, be clear, understand our values, articulate them, and connect with people. So, Anthony, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. And now, what I'd love to do is bring everybody back on stage and have a roundtable. We've heard 4 distinct perspectives today, and what strikes me sitting here is that from each of you, from completely different directions, is pointing to the same invisible wall, that there's a gap between people who speak and are noticed. And from a variety of ways, we all have our experiences. We've identified this issue. And I don't think it really comes down to talent. I don't think it comes down to intelligence. I think we all have a talent and intelligence. And I don't even know that if it comes down to how much someone has to say, it comes down to something harder to name. Something at the intersection of story, neuroscience, belonging, and the strategic presence in an AI-saturated world. So I'd love to open this up to all 4 of you, and I want to start with the most honest question I can ask. What's the one thing, the real thing, that separates the voices that break through from the voices that don't? And what do most people get completely wrong about how to close that gap? So I'd love to go to the round table and see how we can go through that question. And I'd love to start with Paulie. Paulie, what do you think? Oh, you're on mute.
I do.
Oh. You're good.
Sorry. I'm going to be obvious and go stories. It's the stories that we tell. We speak to ourselves in story. We communicate with each other in story. The best place at the fireplace used to be kept for the storyteller. We watch stories. We're entertained by them. So it's knowing the right story to tell to the right people at the right time that I think is probably the most important thing. The big businesses have been using storytelling for forever, really. That's why we've got the passion for companies like Microsoft or Apple or Nike, because they bring you into their story.
So when you work with a speaker who knows their material cold, but it still isn't landing, what's usually the missing ingredient?
It's normally they're either talking too much about themselves, which is it's okay because you're trying to show your authority and what you know, but they're not connecting with the audience. It's finding that the right story to connect with them, the right level. A lot of the time, it's like running a marathon. If you can't get up off the sofa and just run a marathon, you've got to first learn how to run for that length of time. So you start from running from one lamppost to the next. So a lot of the speakers, they've already run the marathon. They've already got to the end, and they're going, "Yeah, come on, you can run a marathon." Whereas a lot of people, they're still on their sofa, or they're still just learning to go from one lamppost to the next. So the speakers that I've seen that haven't landed have been the ones that are trying to call people too far forward. You need to know where they're next going so they can actually see the finish line. They can see that next lamppost that they've got to get to. And you've got to show them that you're the one that can hold their hand and run that marathon with them, one lamppost at a time.
Got it. I love that. Thank you, Paulie. Helen, talk to us. What's the one thing that you think separates voices that break through from the voices that don't?
JB, what a wonderful way to almost talk about the meaning of life, I think, in a way. I like so much Paulie's answer also that sometimes they call people too far forward. As thought leaders, we have a lot of gaps between, I think, where people really are and what we expect or even sometimes demand from someone. And I've always learned to remind myself about the real piece of responsibility. You know, not everybody wants the responsibility that comes with power. So when we are teaching or presenting, or when people are bringing a message to the stage, Anthony also spoke so much about alignment, which I really liked as well. We might be very aligned and we might do all the things right, but if we're not resonating enough with where somebody really is, and the gap between where you are calling them to go and where they really find themselves, and you quite honestly don't know what it takes for them to get from where they are to where you are, I think it's a hit and miss. And there's a lot of that happening because people are a lot more focused, I think, out of just sheer anxiety and sometimes real urgency on their own need. Like sometimes we get preoccupied with our own message or our own speech or our own real desire to help, but we don't really know how to fill that gap. And so I think it matters that you have a very clear idea of what it is that you bring to someone's life in terms of the transformation you are presenting or selling, and you really know where that stops, and really refine just presenting on that transformation. Because so far I see so many people and speakers who are very copy paste of what a lot of people are doing, but they don't have the exact formula or expertise or real model to take people from place A to place B, but they want to sell that they do. And I think people are getting very tired of it, and I think people are not getting value and benefit, and they're just tuning out. They're getting a bit desensitized to all the hype. So definitely I would put it back into one answer and just say the difference between really resonating with an audience and really resonating with your expertise level, like really being clear about your own expertise level, versus the hype and the marketing. They have to be quite in integrity. We have to be in integrity. Like, where do you actually start and where do you actually stop, and where do you pass that client on? And
I love
when
that.
you speak to that, it's really, really important that you can refine your messaging, I think.
It strikes me, Helen, as you're speaking, if you've started a company in the past, and we've all started businesses, right?
Yeah.
When you're in that startup mode, you don't know if you can do what you want to do. You have an idea, you have a belief in yourself, and you're kind of moving forward in that faith, right? But then you get to a certain level in your business, and there's a switch somehow. At least this is my experience when I've been mentoring other businesses, right? Is that it's okay to fake it until you make it, which is really not what the world needs today, right? Because what happens is that's where the hype machine starts. And the hype machine right now is on overwhelm. Everybody's got that going on. So for us, and I think, Helen, what strikes me as you're talking is that we really need to be clear about who we are and what we stand for. Because if we're not, then we're just part of that hype. And that's really, you can't be heard if you're part of the noise. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Helen. I appreciate that. Christopher, talk to us. What's the one thing that separates the voices that break through from the voices that don't?
So I think I have two things. One, I wanted to bounce off what Helen was saying, because I think it's really important for people to understand who are claiming to be experts and who are not experts, right? And so I think part of what's happening is we need people to remember that they have to do their own due diligence to understand who's talking to them, right? Just because somebody says they're an expert doesn't make them an expert. We have gotten into this society because just somebody has a lot of followers on a social media platform, they think that they're an expert in something, right? And they're not. So have they actually done the work? One of the things I like to talk to my clients or potential clients about is the differentiator between one particular diversity, equity, inclusion practitioner and another. And what I say is the differentiator is, has somebody been in the seat before, right? Has somebody been the chief diversity officer of an organization who had to be in the room sitting across from a CEO or a board having to make really hard decisions about things that needed to go with the organization? Or did they grow up just as a quote unquote consultant and they never actually had to implement the work that they were suggesting? Right. So I think right, so that's one of the things I would probably say is, how many times have we worked with a consultant and they left our building and we took the big deck that they printed out and gave us and threw it in the trash can because it was just garbage, and we had to, we paid a lot of money for not a lot of work. So that's one thing I would say to bounce off what Helen was saying. The other thing that I would really like to dive in here is what I was talking about in the talk that I was giving earlier in this panel, is making sure that your content is accessible to your audience and people who are beyond who you consider your audience to be. Really examining the language you're using, understanding how the language lands in other languages. It's one of the reasons why I focus on belonging. Because if we think about the word belonging in this space of diversity, equity, and inclusion, in every language across the world, except for 6 or 7, belonging has one direct translation, where the word diversity in a lot of languages has multiple translations because of the context you're using, especially when we get into languages that use symbols instead of words to describe, that use symbols for words instead of letters, like we do in most of the Western world. So what we're getting into Mandarin and Arabic and other things. So take Mandarin, for example. The word diversity actually has 7 or 8 different translations based on context, right? Are you talking about biodiversity? Are you talking about diversity of people or diversity of thought? It has a different translation, where belonging has one. And we also, it's a human characteristic that we want to know that we belong. And so it's very easy to also talk to people about creating a culture of belonging across languages and across cultures. So what I would challenge folks is to really examine their message and how accessible is it to others beyond your identity.
I like that. I love that. What strikes me as you said that for the 2 components, I don't know if you are you familiar with Brendan Richard? So Brendan,
That's familiar.
Yeah, Brendan wrote a book many years ago, I think in the 90s. He had just come out of college, and wrote a book, The Golden Ticket. And in this book, he describes relationships, and he presented himself as an expert in human relationships because in his 2 years, his junior and senior year of college, he helped lots of different his fellow students at his university get through relationships that were failing. So he wrote down all of his notes and everything and turned it into a book, and he got a huge following relatively quickly. It became a New York Times best-selling book. Now, the question that became apparent to me is, was he really an expert after having conversations with 20 or 30 of his fellow students at a university? Or was he really just was he able to communicate about what he had learned, right? That doesn't necessarily make you an expert, but what it does do is it gives you an opinion, right? And in today's social media world, that kind of popularity is what people call social proof, right? And unfortunately, social proof, if you're looking at it from a logic perspective, is something that you look for to break the logic of an argument. And when we're talking about really communicating with people and understanding who you are. It's also being honest about what experience you currently have, as well as the kind of experience you hope to have. Right?
Yes.
And when you're not honest about that with yourself, and you're communicating to other people that you truly do have that level of expertise, that's where you have imposter syndrome and all that kind of stuff sits inside of your head. But more importantly, that leaks out, and it causes all the people who hear you to have that little doubt. That doubt about this person, about me, because I'm the one that's giving it, but also the next person who comes, and the next person who comes, right? That little nagging doubt that sits in everybody's mind at that point. So what I've learned today from you, Christopher, is that I need to be much more aware of everything that I do. That awareness becomes part of being able to communicate properly. So let me ask one final question for you. If is there a version of being heard that doesn't first require belonging?
That doesn't first require belonging?
Uh-huh.
I would say the answer is no.
Yes, so I was hoping you'd say that.
I mean, so when I think about belonging, you have to belong to yourself first.
Right.
Right? You have to know, how do you belong to yourself first? How do you belong at home? How do you belong in community? How do you belong at work? And how do you belong in society? So think about those concentric circles. And the through line is knowing that you belong. Now, how that shows up and how it's practiced is different, right? And so what I would just say is that you need to know that you belong to yourself first. However, also you have a responsibility, especially those of us on this panel, right? We all have a responsibility to make sure that the language we are using is signaling that people belong here.
Mm.
And if we are using language that is already, as I used in the talk, when we say, things are crazy, right? I have, in the last couple of weeks, I've been orchestrating a relocation across country. And my schedule has just been all over the place. And I've had to catch myself because people are like, how are things going? And I've been like, I almost would say my schedule's crazy. But what I was doing, what I instead said was, my schedule is very tense, right? So I think that that's actually a more accurate phrase about what my schedule looks like, because my schedule was very tense, right? I'm orchestrating a move. I have a lot of travel. Speaking engagements. It's a tense time. And so actually that's a more accurate description of what was going on in my life than quote unquote crazy, right? Because that is the vernacular that we have just been accustomed to say,
right,
when our schedule is tense or when our schedule is, kind of all over the place. But really, is that actually an accurate description of what it is? No. And we're using a pejorative term to describe what our schedule is like when it really should not be used that way, right? And so, those are the type of things that we really need to be thinking about, is the language that we are using actually has an impact, right? The age-old adage of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, that's gone, right? That is truly gone. They actually do. And I actually lead clients through a session about actually how words actually do create harm that they don't really know. So just making sure that you're examining your language. Those out there who would like a pep talk on how to actually get their speeches to be more inclusive, I'm happy to have a conversation with you to examine about how to make your language that you're using to be more inclusive.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, Anthony, talk to us. What's the one thing that separates the voices that break through from the voices that don't?
I'm just going to put it down to alignment, and that's exactly what Helen mentioned before. But look, every single person has given little bits of gems that I guess that we all resonate with each other. I think alignment is important, because if you're aligned to something, that an experience that you've been through, like for example, in my life, I've been through many adversities. I've been through something like 24 restructures and 4 redundancies in my career, right? And many adversities. Now, I can talk about, I can talk about helping someone who's going through a challenging transition, because I've got a lived experience, right? That's different from someone who is like, especially in the world of AI, where you've got so many people doing stuff, but they've not lived that experience. So I've also spent 30 years in technology, so I understand how technology works. I understand data analytics. I understand machine learning, all that sort of stuff, right? So if you're aligned with whatever you're talking about, then I think that's where that's what's important. So someone who knows that who they really are, what they believe in, who they really help, and then having the courage to communicate that honestly, because people can feel the message is real, and simply repeating what everyone else says is not going to help, right? Because then you just sound like everyone else. So I think it's your creativity, your critical thinking, your voice. Each one of us is a unique, and when we speak in our uniqueness, in our authentic way, people can connect with you because they feel the energy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you all for being here today. This has been a wonderful experience for me hosting this and getting to know you. I know that the audience should be reaching out to every one of you today. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to post the connections that you have, and I've reached out to almost everybody. I haven't got to you, Paulie. I'll get you here in a second. But I'm connecting with everybody because we are in a place in the world in 2026 where we live in this world that's all over the place. It's chaotic, right? And divisive in many instances. But we have an opportunity to really bring that together with the voices that we have. And so I want to thank the speakers today. I want to thank Global Speakers Talk, Anshu Tiwari, who's the producer of the show. And finally, one last thing is, I believe that everything that we have in life is really important. The world is not short on voices, but it is short on people brave enough to make their voice mean something. It's short on people telling their real stories, the stories of work, of belonging. And you have a choice, my dear listeners. You have a perspective that no one else on earth possesses. You have a story that can change a room. It can change a career. It can change a life. The question was never whether you had something worth saying, but the real question is whether you are ready to say it in a way that the world cannot walk past. I think you are. I think if you implement the things that you've learned today, you can step up and be a force leader in guiding the rest of the world, because we can bring them all together. So once again, I thank you, our extraordinary speakers. Thank you to every one of you who showed up, not just to listen, but to grow. Again, my name is JB Herrera, and this has been Global Speakers Talk and our monthly summit. Go, be heard. Thanks, everybody.
Together we are Global Speakers Talk.